They say karma works in mysterious ways. My husband abandoned me 9 months pregnant on a frozen highway because his mother's birthday party was more important. He drove away without looking back. But what he didn't know was that the stranger who saved me would become my greatest blessing, and his cruelty would cost him everything he held dear. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, stay until the end. You won't believe what happened next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. My name is Emma, and this is the story of how the worst day of my life became my salvation. I was 39 weeks pregnant, carrying what felt like a bowling ball attached to my spine. Every movement was a negotiation between my body and gravity. My feet had swollen to twice their normal size, and I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen my ankles. None of that mattered when I thought about holding my baby, a feeling that filled me with equal parts excitement and terror. Today, though, a different kind of dread consumed me. We were driving to my mother-in-law's birthday celebration. Margaret. Just thinking her name made my shoulders tense. My relationship with David's mother was a carefully choreographed dance of polite smiles and cutting remarks. She'd made it abundantly clear from day one that I, a bookstore manager from a modest background, wasn't worthy of her precious son, the successful architect. To her, I was an unfortunate choice he had made in a moment of weakness. But David insisted we attend. "Emma, you know how mother gets when she feels disrespected," he'd said that morning, his jaw already tight with the familiar stress that appeared whenever Margaret was involved. "We can't miss this." I knew. God, how I knew. Margaret was the woman who demanded the world revolved around her wishes, and heaven help anyone who dared to suggest otherwise. The car cut through the Pennsylvania winter landscape, everything buried under blankets of white. It had been a brutal season, with snowdrifts towering along the highway's edge. Despite the heater running full blast, I couldn't stop shivering. A sudden, sharp sensation rippled across my abdomen, making me gasp. "She's really active today," I murmured, running my hand over my stomach. We'd decided not to find out the gender, but I had a feeling it was a girl. His only response was a non-committal grunt. His eyes stayed locked on the road ahead. He'd been like this for weeks now, emotionally absent, living in some distant mental space I couldn't access. I kept telling myself it was the pressure from his firm, the new downtown project that had him working 70-hour weeks. Then it happened. A strange warmth followed by an unmistakable sensation like something had released inside me. Liquid soaked through my dress and onto the seat. My heart started racing as I turned to look at my husband. Fear and wonder collided in my chest. "David," I whispered, my voice shaking. "David, I think my water just broke." The car swerved violently as he slammed the brakes. We skidded across the icy road before jerking to a stop on the shoulder. "What? Right now? You've got to be kidding me." His voice wasn't concerned or worried. It was angry. Furious, even. I nodded, feeling the first contraction beginning to build. A deep, intense pressure that made me grip the door handle. "David, we need to get to the hospital. Now!" He killed the engine and whipped around to face me. His expression was something I'd never seen before. Cold, accusatory rage. "You planned this, didn't you?" The words were so absurd, so completely divorced from reality that I couldn't immediately comprehend them. "What? What are you talking about? I didn't plan anything. The baby is coming." "You knew," she shouted, his voice rising to a pitch I'd never heard before. "You knew today was Mother's birthday. She's been organizing this party for 3 months, and you just had to ruin it." Pain and shock fought for dominance as tears started streaming down my face. "This is your baby, David. Babies don't come on schedule. Please, I need help. I'm scared." He threw open his door and climbed out, slamming it with such force that the entire vehicle shut. I watched through the windshield, some small part of me still hoping he was coming to help me. Instead, he marched to the bag and popped the trunk. "David, what are you doing?" Another contraction hit, this one stronger, stealing my breath. He grabbed my hospital bag, the one I had meticulously packed 3 weeks ago, and he hurled it into the snow beside the highway. "Get out," he said, his voice terrifyingly flat. "I'm not taking you anywhere. You've already made me late from Mother's party. You're on your own." The world seemed to tilt. This couldn't be happening. This was my husband, the father of my child. He couldn't possibly be abandoning me here, alone in labor, on a deserted highway in the middle of winter. "David, please," I sobbed. "This is our baby, our child." He ignored my pleas completely. He walked back to the driver's side, got in, and started the engine. When he looked at me one final time, his eyes held no recognition, no love, just cold indifference. "My mother is more important," he stated simply. "She gave me life. You are just someone I married." The engine roared, the tires spun on the icy road, and then he was gone, the taillights of her car vanishing into the swirling white landscape, leaving me alone with my agony and terror. Little did he know his heartless decision would set off a chain of events that would shatter his perfect world, and the man who would save me, he'd become the family I'd never know I needed. Keep watching, the real story's just beginning. The cold hit me like a physical blow. I was on my knees in the snow, my arms wrapped around my swollen belly as another contraction tore through me. The wind howled across the empty highway, cutting through my thin coat. Tears froze on my cheeks almost instantly. I thought of my father, who'd passed away when I was 17. If only he were here now. His strong arms, his reassuring voice telling me everything would be okay. I would have given anything for that comfort. My mother had remarried and moved to Arizona. We barely spoke anymore. I was utterly, completely alone. But survival instinct kicked in. If I stayed here, hypothermia would kill me and my baby. I had to move. Using every ounce of strength I possessed, I crawled through the snow toward the road's edge, praying that someone, anyone, would pass by. Each contraction felt like being torn apart from the inside. The pain was becoming everything. My entire universe reduced to waves of agony crashing through my body. Through the haze of suffering, I saw lights. 2 headlights cutting through the snowfall. I tried to wave, but my arm wouldn't cooperate. The darkness was closing in around the edges of my vision. The last thing I registered before everything went black was the sound of tires crunching on snow. Very close. And then a man's urgent voice. "Oh my God, Miss? Miss, can you hear me?" When consciousness returned, I was surrounded by warmth. I was in the back seat of a car, covered with a heavy jacket that smelled like coffee and pine. Through the fog of pain, I heard a voice, steady, calm, reassuring. "Stay with me, sweetheart. The hospital's only 10 minutes away. You're going to be fine." The man driving was probably in his mid-60s, with silver hair and deep lines around his kind eyes. Later, I would learn his name was Robert. He was a widower who'd lost his wife to cancer 5 years earlier. He drove for a rideshare company now, mostly to keep himself busy and feel useful. He'd found me, a semi-conscious pregnant woman in active labor, and hadn't hesitated for even a second. He got me to the emergency room with minutes to spare. What followed was a blur of bright lights, urgent voices, and overwhelming pain. I pushed when they told me to push, breathed when they told me to breathe. And through it all, somewhere in the background, I was aware that Robert had stayed. He was in the waiting area, a stranger who cared more than my own husband had. When it was finally over, when I heard that first beautiful, angry cry, I wept. A nurse with gentle hands placed a tiny, perfect bundle in my arms. "It's a girl," she said, smiling. "A healthy, beautiful girl. You did wonderfully." My daughter. I looked down in her small, scrunched face, her tiny fists waving in the air, and felt a love so fierce it was almost frightening. In that moment, I made a silent vow. I would protect this child with everything I had. She would never, ever doubt that she was wanted and loved. Robert appeared in the doorway a few minutes later, hesitant, as if unsure whether he'd be intruding. His eyes were suspiciously bright. "I just wanted to make sure you were both okay," he said quietly. "Come in, please," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "Robert, if you hadn't found me," I couldn't finish the sentence. The alternative was too horrible to contemplate. "Don't think about that," he said firmly, stepping closer. "You're both safe now. That's all that matters." He looked down at the baby and his weathered face transformed with wonder. "She's absolutely perfect. Have you chosen a name?" "Sophie," I said. The name had come to me during those final pushes. "Her name is Sophie." "That's beautiful," he murmured. "Hello, Sophie. Welcome to the world, little one." I held her out to him. "Would you like to hold her?" His hands trembled slightly as he took her, cradling her with the careful tenderness of someone who understands how precious and fragile life is. "She's a miracle," he whispered. "A real miracle." Over the next few days, Robert became my lifeline. He brought me decent food from the cafeteria, helped me navigate the maze of insurance paperwork, and simply sat with me when the reality of my situation threatened to overwhelm me. I had no one else. No family rushing to my side. No friends bringing balloons and congratulations. No husband. On the third day, a social worker visited. She was a tired-looking woman with sympathetic eyes. "Mom, we need to discuss your discharge plan. Where will you and Sophie be going?" The question hung in the air. I looked down at my sleeping daughter and felt panic rising in my throat. I, I, I'm not sure. I had been living in David's house. Well, technically it was Margaret's house that she had loaned us. I'd given up my apartment when we got married. My savings account was nearly empty. I had nowhere to go. Robert, who had been standing quietly in the corner, cleared his throat. "If I may," he said hesitantly, "I have a 3-bedroom house. My wife and I bought it when we were planning to have children, but that never happened. It's too much space for just me." He looked directly at me. "Emma, if you need a place to stay, just temporarily, until you figure things out, you and Sophie would be welcome." I stared at him, this stranger who had already saved my life once. "Robert, I can't ask you." "You're not asking. I'm offering. Please, let me help." Tears spilled down my cheeks again. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." His expression grew distant for a moment, as if he were looking at something far away. "When my wife was dying, people helped us. Neighbors, strangers even. They brought food, they sat with her so I could sleep. They just showed up." His eyes refocused on me. "I can't repay those people, but maybe I can pay it forward." Robert had given me a second chance, but David's abandonment wouldn't go unanswered. The universe has a way of evening the scales, and karma was just getting started. Don't go anywhere. You need to see what happened next. 2 weeks later, I was settled into Robert's guest room. The house was in a quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets and well-kept lawns, the kind of place where people still wave to each other. My room was painted a soft blue, with large windows that let in morning sunlight. Robert had even set up a small nursery area in the corner, complete with a secondhand crib he'd found online. "It's not much," he said apologetically, "but it's safe and sturdy." It was perfect. Robert worked irregular hours, driving for the rideshare app, but whenever he was home, he was completely devoted to Sophie. He'd come in from a shift and immediately ask to hold her, his entire face softening as he gazed down at her tiny features. "She smiled at me today," he announced one evening, looking ridiculously proud. "That was probably just gas," I said, smiling. "No, no, that was definitely a smile. She knows her Uncle Robert." Uncle Robert. The title had emerged naturally, and hearing it made my heart ache in the best way. Sophie would never lack for love, I realized. Even if her biological father had abandoned her, she had this wonderful man who treated her like she was his own granddaughter. Meanwhile, I had practical matters to address. I filed for divorce the following week. The attorney I consulted, a sharp woman named Patricia, who offered me a reduced rate when she heard my story, assured me it would be straightforward. "Given that he abandoned you during a medical emergency while pregnant, we'll have no problem establishing grounds," Patricia said, her eyes flashing with anger on my behalf. "And we'll make sure you get everything you're entitled to: child support, spousal support, the works." David didn't contest anything. He signed every paper that was put in front of him with barely a glance, as if I were some tedious business matter he needed to resolve quickly. His attorney communicated that David wanted a clean break with no ongoing obligations beyond legal requirements. That was fine with me. I wanted him out of our lives completely. Margaret called once. I saw her name flash on my phone screen and felt my stomach drop. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Emma." Her voice was ice. "I don't know what lies you've been telling people, but David has informed me that you deliberately went into labor to ruin my birthday celebration." For a moment, I was too stunned to respond. Then anger, pure, white-hot rage flooded through me. "Your son," I said, my voice shaking, "abandoned me on the side of the highway in the middle of winter while I was in active labor. He threw my hospital bag in the snow and drove away. I could have died. Your granddaughter could have died. And you're calling to complain about your birthday party?" "Don't be so dramatic," Margaret snapped. "David said you were being hysterical and refused to be reasonable. And quite frankly, I raised him better than to—" I ended the call and immediately blocked her number. Then I blocked David's number too. They were ghosts from a life I had already buried. The months passed. Sophie grew from a tiny, helpless newborn into a curious, babbling infant. She developed a laugh that sounded like pure joy, and she reserved her biggest smiles for Robert. Every milestone, her first time rolling over, her first tooth, her first solid food, Robert was there, cheering and taking pictures like a proud grandfather. As for me, I was healing. The raw, bleeding wound of David's betrayal began to scar over. Some days I barely thought about him at all. I got a job working from home doing data entry, which allowed me to stay with Sophie during the day. Robert refused to accept rent. He said, "You buy groceries and help around the house. That's more than enough. Besides, having you both here, it's made this house feel like a home again." I noticed other changes too. Robert started whistling while he cooked breakfast. He'd put on a few healthy pounds. The deep sadness that had lived in his eyes when we first met had been replaced by something lighter. And I realized something that both thrilled and terrified me. I was falling in love with him. It wasn't the dramatic, passionate infatuation I'd felt for David. This was different, steadier, deeper, built on a foundation of genuine respect and partnership. Robert was kind. He was patient. He showed up day after day with no expectation of anything in return. He loved my daughter as if she were his own blood. I caught him watching me sometimes when he thought I wasn't looking, and the expression on his face made my heart skip. One evening, after I'd put Sophie down for the night, Robert asked if I wanted to take a walk. It was early summer now, the air warm and sweet with the scent of honeysuckle. We strolled to the small park at the end of the street and sat on a bench overlooking a pond where ducks floated lazily. "Emma," Robert began, then paused, seeming to gather his courage. "These past months with you and Sophie have been the happiest I've been since Sarah died. You've brought light back into this old house and into my life." My heart started beating faster. "I know it hasn't been that long, and I know you've been through hell. The last thing I want is to pressure you or make things complicated, but I need you to know." He turned to face me fully. "I've fallen in love with you, both of you. And if you could ever see me as more than just a friend, more than just Sophie's Uncle Robert, I would be the happiest man alive." He pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. Inside was a simple gold bond with a modest diamond. "Will you marry me?" I looked at this good, kind man who had saved my life in every way that mattered. Tears blurred my vision, but this time they were tears of joy, so profound I thought I might burst. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, Robert, I love you too. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." We were building something beautiful from the ashes of my old life. But David's story, that was taking a very different turn. Stay with me. This is where everything changes. Robert and I were married in a small ceremony at the courthouse with Patricia as our witness and Sophie, now almost a year old, as our tiny guest of honor. Sophie wore a white dress with tiny roses embroidered on it, and she spent most of the ceremony trying to grab the judge's gavel. "By the power vested in me," the judge said, smiling, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Robert kissed me gently, and I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. A few months after our wedding, Robert officially filed to adopt Sophie. The process was surprisingly smooth. David had already signed away his parental rights as part of the divorce settlement, eager to sever all ties. When the adoption was finalized, Robert cried as he held the certificate. "I'm her father now," he whispered in wonder. "Legally, officially, her father." "You've always been her father," I told him. "This just makes it official." Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Sophie took her first steps, said her first word. It was Dada, naturally, and Robert practically glowed for a week and developed a hilarious obsession with our neighbor's golden retriever. I got promoted to a team lead position at my remote job, which came with a significant raise. Robert continued driving, but was talking about retiring fully to spend more time with Sophie. We were happy, genuinely, wonderfully happy. Then, about 18 months after that snowy highway nightmare, I got a Facebook message from an unknown account. The profile picture showed a woman about my age with auburn hair and tired eyes. "Hi, Emma. You don't know me, but my name is Jessica. I'm David's coworker at the architecture firm. Can we talk? It's important." My first instinct was to delete it. I moved on. I didn't want any connection to that chapter of my life, but curiosity got the better of me. "What is this about?" I typed back. Her response came within minutes. "It's about David and Margaret. Things have fallen apart. I thought you deserved to know. Can I call you?" Against my better judgment, I gave her my number. She called immediately. "Thank you for talking to me," Jessica said. She had a pleasant voice, professional. "I'll get straight to it. You probably know that David was being considered for junior partner at the firm." I didn't know, but okay. Well, about 8 months ago, someone sent an anonymous email to the partners. It detailed exactly what David did to you, abandoning you on the highway, the whole thing. The partners were horrified. They're big on public image and family values. David was removed from consideration for partnership immediately. I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. How did they find out? No one knows who sent the email, but it was detailed. It even included the police report from when you were picked up by the ambulance. There had been an ambulance call to the hospital after Robert brought me in, and I'd given a statement to an officer while still in the maternity ward. It even included the police report from when you were picked up by the ambulance. There had been an ambulance call to the hospital after Robert brought me in, and I'd given a statement to an officer while still in the maternity ward. David tried to deny it, but the documentation was all there. Good, I said simply. That's not all, Jessica continued. After that, things started getting worse for him. Margaret, his mother, she was diagnosed with late-stage cancer about 6 months ago. I felt a small pang at that. Whatever else Margaret was, cancer was a horrible thing. David became her primary caregiver, and I guess the stress of dealing with her illness while his career was falling apart, he started making mistakes at work. Big mistakes. Missed deadlines, errors in designs that could have caused serious structural problems. The firm let him go 3 months ago. I was silent, processing this information. Last month, Jessica said, her voice dropping, Margaret passed away. And here's the thing. Apparently, David had been counting on inheriting her estate. She was wealthy, that big house, investment accounts, everything. But Margaret changed her will shortly before she died. Changed it how? She left almost everything to charity. David got the house, but it turns out it has a massive mortgage she had taken out a few years ago. He got the debt and basically nothing else. Word is, she told her attorney that David had disappointed him profoundly and didn't deserve her money. I couldn't help it. I laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. So let me get this straight. He destroyed his marriage and abandoned his child to please his mother, and in the end, she disinherited him anyway? Essentially, yes. And there's one more thing. Jessica hesitated. He tried to contact you, didn't he? Multiple times? I frowned. No, I blocked him. Well, he's been trying. He showed up at the office last week. We're still friendly, and he was asking about how to find you. He said he needed to make amends, that he made a huge mistake. Emma, I think he's planning to show up wherever you're living. A chill ran down my spine. Why are you telling me this? Because I was his friend for a long time, but what he did to you was unforgivable. I have a daughter too. If someone did that to her, Jessica's voice broke slightly. You deserve a heads up. And honestly, he doesn't deserve to disrupt whatever life you've built. After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence. David had lost everything. His career, his mother, his inheritance, and his future. And now he wanted back into my life? Not a chance. I told Robert everything that evening. His expression grew stormy as I recounted the conversation. If he shows up here, Robert said quietly, I'll handle it. I know you will, I said, taking his hand. But I think I need to be the one to face him. I need to show him and myself that I'm not the helpless woman he left on that highway anymore. David thought he could come back and find forgiveness. He thought wrong. When he finally showed up on my doorstep, he got the shock of his life. You won't believe what I said to him. Keep watching. 3 weeks after Jessica's call, on a Saturday afternoon, the doorbell rang. Sophie was napping, and Robert was in the garage, organizing his tools. I was in the kitchen, preparing dinner, and I wiped my hands on a towel as I walked to the door. Through the peephole, I saw him, David. He looked terrible. His hair, which he'd always kept meticulously styled, was unkempt and graying at the temples. He'd lost weight, and his expensive clothes hung loosely on his frame. But what struck me most was his expression. The arrogant confidence that had always defined him was gone, replaced by something that looks like desperation. For a moment, I considered not opening the door, but then I thought about what I'd told Robert. I wasn't that frightened, abandoned woman anymore. I was stronger now. I opened the door, but didn't unlock the screen door between us. "Emma," David said, and his voice cracked. "Thank God. I've been trying to reach you for months." "I blocked you," I said flatly. "Very deliberately." I know I deserve that. But please, I just need 5 minutes. I need to talk to you about." "About what exactly?" I crossed my arms. "About how you abandoned your pregnant wife on a frozen highway? About how you threw my hospital bag in the snow and drove away while I was in labor? About how your mother was more important than your own child?" He flinched as if I'd struck him. "Emma, I made a terrible mistake. I was under so much pressure from mother and the stress of the baby coming, and I snapped. I wasn't thinking clearly." "You weren't thinking clearly," I repeated slowly. "That's your excuse?" "You left me to die, David. Your daughter could have died." "I know. God, Emma, I know. I thought about it every single day since then. I hate myself for what I did." Tears were running down his face now. My life has fallen apart. I lost my job, mother died, I have nothing. And I realized that the only thing that ever mattered was you and our baby. Please, Emma, please give me another chance. Let me meet my daughter. Let me prove I can be the husband and father you both deserve. I stared at him, this man I'd once loved, who'd once been my whole world, and I felt nothing. No anger, no pain, not even pity. He was a stranger. "Your daughter," I said carefully, "doesn't have a father named David. She has a father named Robert. He's the man who saved our lives. He's the man who held her through colic and changed her diapers and walked the floor with her when she couldn't sleep. He's the one who teaches her to be kind and brave. He's her father in every way that actually counts." "But I'm her biological—" "You're a sperm donor. That's all. You signed away your parental rights. Robert adopted her legally. She's his daughter now." David's face crumbled. "Emma, please, I'm begging you. I need my family back. I have nothing left." "And whose fault is that?" My voice was sharp now, all the anger I thought I'd moved past suddenly flooding back. "You had everything, David. You had a wife who loved you, a baby on the way, a good career, and you threw it all away because your mother called and you obeyed like a trained dog." "I was wrong. I admitted I was wrong. You being sorry doesn't fix anything." I was shouting now, my hands shaking. "You don't get to come back and ask for forgiveness after what you did. You don't get to disrupt the life we've built because your life fell apart. That's not how this works." Behind me, I heard footsteps. Robert appeared at my shoulder, his presence solid and reassuring. "Is there a problem here?" Robert said calmly, though I could hear the steel beneath his words. David's eyes widened as he looked at Robert, this older man standing protectively beside me. "Who are you?" "I'm Robert, Emma's husband, Sophie's father, and I think you need to leave now." Wait, you got married? To him?" David looked between us, incomprehension and anger warring on his face. "Yes," I said firmly. "I married a real man, someone who knows what commitment means, someone who would never abandon his family." "This is insane." David's desperation was morphing into fury. "I'm her real father. You can't just replace me with some random old man." "Watch your tone," Robert said quietly, and something in his voice made David take a step back. Emma asked you to leave. You should probably do that. I have rights. I have super custody. You have no rights. I cut him off. You signed them away, remember? You couldn't wait to be rid of us. And now a judge has given Sophie to a father who actually wants her. If you try to fight this, all the documents from that night, the police reports, the hospital records, the testimony of the man who found me half frozen in the snow, all of it will become public record. Is that really what you want? David's face went pale. You do that to me? You did it to yourself. Now get off my property. If you come back, I'll call the police. For a long moment, David just stood there, looking lost and broken. Then, without another word, he turned and walked back to his car. An old sedan, I noticed, not the luxury vehicle he used to drive. I watched him drive away, and as his car disappeared around the corner, I felt Robert's arm slide around my waist. You okay? He asked softly. Yeah, I am. And I meant it. David finally understood what he'd lost. But the story doesn't end there. What happened next would prove that sometimes the universe delivers perfect justice. One more part to go. You need to hear this. 6 months after David's pathetic appearance on our doorstep, life had settled back into its peaceful rhythm. Sophie was now 2.5, a whirlwind of energy and curiosity with her father's kind eyes and my stubborn chin. She'd started calling Robert Daddy around 18 months, and it never failed to make him tear up with joy. We'd moved into a bigger house, still modest, but ours, bought with our combined savings and my improved salary. Robert had officially retired from driving to be a full-time father and house husband, a role he embraced with wholehearted enthusiasm. Our home was filled with laughter, crayon drawings on the fridge, and the comfortable chaos of a happy family. I'd almost forgotten about David entirely when Patricia called me one afternoon. Emma, I wanted to give you a heads up, my attorney said. David filed for bankruptcy last month. It's public record. The house Margaret left him went into foreclosure. Apparently, he couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments once he lost his job. I absorbed this information without much emotion. Where's he now? According to the filing, he's living with a cousin in another state, working retail from what I understand. Patricia paused. There's something else. He tried to file a motion to revisit the custody arrangement. My stomach dropped. What? Relax. It was dismissed immediately. The judge noted that he'd voluntarily terminated his parental rights and that there was no grounds for a reversal. His attorney apparently tried to argue that he'd been under duress when he signed the papers, that given the documented evidence of abandonment, it went nowhere. You're safe, Emma. He can't touch Sophie. After we hung up, I sat for a long time, thinking about the man David had become. Part of me, a very small part, felt something that might have been pity. He'd lost everything. But then I remembered that cold highway, the terror of being abandoned while in labor, and any sympathy evaporated. He'd made his choices. Now he was living with the consequences. That evening, after Sophie was in bed, Robert and I sat on our back porch, watching fireflies dance across the yard. It was one of those perfect summer nights that felt almost magical. Patricia called today, I said, and I told him about David's bankruptcy and failed custody attempt. Robert was quiet for a moment, his hand finding mine in the darkness. Do you ever regret it? What happened, I mean? If David had been a better man, you'd still be married to him. I turned to look at my husband, this wonderful, steady man who'd given me and Sophie everything we needed. Not for a single second, I said firmly. If David hadn't abandoned me on that highway, I never would have met you. Sophie wouldn't have you as her father. We wouldn't have this life. I squeezed his hand. What David did was cruel and unforgivable, but in a strange way, he gave me the greatest gift. He freed me to find real love. Robert leaned over and kissed me softly. I'm the lucky one. You and Sophie saved me as much as I saved you. A year later, we got unexpected news. I was pregnant. At 40, it wasn't something we'd planned, but when I saw those two pink lines, I felt nothing but joy. Sophie was thrilled at the prospect of being a big sister. Is it a boy or a girl, Daddy? She asked Robert constantly. We'll find out when the baby gets here, he'd tell her patiently. This pregnancy was different from my first in every possible way. I wasn't walking on eggshells around a disapproving mother-in-law. I wasn't with a man who treated me like an inconvenience. Instead, Robert came to every appointment, read every pregnancy book, and set up the nursery with the kind of devoted attention that made my heart swell. When our son, we named him James, was born, Robert cried as he held him. Sophie climbed up onto the hospital bed to peer at her new brother with intense curiosity. He's very small, she observed seriously. You were that small once, Robert told her, pulling her close with his free arm. And now look how big you are. I'm going to teach him everything, she declared. How to color and how to share and everything. I looked at my family, my daughter, my husband, my newborn son, and felt a completeness I'd never known was possible. 2 years after James was born, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, I was at the grocery store with both kids when I saw him. David was at the end of the aisle, wearing a store employee vest stocking shelves. He looked older than his years, his shoulders hunched with a weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion. He glanced up and our eyes met. For a frozen moment, neither of us moved. Sophie was chattering away in the cart and James was babbling happily in the baby seat. David's gaze moved to them, and I saw the recognition dawn in his eyes. This beautiful little girl who had his dark hair and the baby boy who would never know him. I could have turned away, could have left without acknowledging him, but something made me push my cart forward. Hello, David, I said quietly. Emma. His voice was hoarse. Your children are beautiful. Thank you. I put a protective hand on Sophie. She'd stopped chattering and was watching this stranger with curious eyes. How old is she now? He asked, his eyes never leaving Sophie. 4.5, and James just turned 2. The math was obvious. I'd moved on, built a whole new family. David swallowed hard. You look happy. I am, I said simply, because it was true. I really am. I'm glad. He seemed to be struggling with something. Emma, I know I have no right to ask, but does she ever ask about me, her biological father? I looked down at Sophie, who was now trying to grab a box of cookies from the cart. She knows Robert isn't her biological father, I said carefully. We've always been honest with her. But when she asks who her daddy is, she points to Robert. That's the only father she knows or needs. David nodded slowly, his eyes glistening. I understand. I just want you to know that I think about her every day, both of them, and you. I think about that night on the highway, and I wish... His voice broke. I wish I could go back and be the man you all deserved. But you can't, I said gently, but firmly. None of us can change the past. We can only live with our choices. I know. He wiped his eyes roughly. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed you to hear it. I am so sorry. I looked at this broken man, and I realized that the anchor I'd carried for so long had finally burned out completely. I didn't forgive him. What he'd done was unforgivable. But I didn't hate him anymore either. He was just pitiful. I hope you find some peace, David. I really do. But that peace doesn't include us. We're not your redemption story. I know. I pushed my cart forward, my children safe beside me. As I walked away, Sophie piped up, Mommy, who was that sad man? Just someone Mommy used to know, sweetheart. No one important. And it was true. David had become exactly that. No one important. a footnote in a story that had a much happier ending than he could have ever given me. That night, I told Robert about the encounter. We were in bed, the house quiet around us, the baby monitor glowing softly on the nightstand. "How do you feel?" he asked, pulling me close. "I feel free," I said, realizing it was true. Seeing him like that, I realized I don't carry any of that pain anymore. He's just a stranger now, a stranger I once knew. "Good," he murmured into my hair. "You deserve to be free of him." "We all do," I agreed. "Sophie, James, you, me. We're our own family, complete, whole. And he has no part in it." 5 years later, Sophie is 9 years old and passionate about soccer and science. She tells everyone who'll listen that she wants to be either a veterinarian or an astronaut. She hasn't decided which yet. James is 7, obsessed with dinosaurs, and has his father's gentle temperament. We never heard from David again after that day in the grocery store. I heard through the grapevine that he eventually moved across the country, trying to start over somewhere no one knew his story. I hope he found some measure of happiness, but honestly, I don't think about him much anymore. Robert retired fully last year, and we've started taking family trips. Nothing fancy, but we've seen the Grand Canyon, visited Yellowstone, spent a week at the beach. Sophie and James fight like siblings do, but they're also fiercely protective of each other. Sometimes on quiet evenings, Robert and I sit on the porch like we used to, watching our children play in the yard. And I think about that frozen highway, that moment of absolute despair when I thought my life was ending. I was wrong. My life wasn't ending that night. It was beginning. The man who abandoned me gave me the greatest gift without meaning to. He led me to the family I was always meant to have. He thought his mother was more important than his wife and child. He learned too late that nothing is more important than the people who love you. As for me, I learned that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can become the door that opens onto your best life. I learned that family isn't always about blood. It's about who shows up. It's about who stays. Robert showed up. He stayed. And that made all the difference. My name is Emma, and this is the story of how being abandoned led me to find my real home. Not despite the betrayal, but because of it. Karma didn't just punish David, it rewarded me with something far better than I ever could have imagined. And that's the sweetest revenge of all. Living well, loving deeply, and being genuinely, completely happy. If this story touched you, remember, sometimes the worst betrayals lead us to our greatest blessings. The universe has a way of putting us exactly where we need to be, even when the journey is painful. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Never lose hope. Your happy ending might be closer than you think. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of the story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.